Here's the first attempt at my TinyDVM system. I'm using the Arduino Maker 1010 Wi-Fi board, maker board, just because I've got one really. But I decided to use this display. It's a sort of quite a small OLED display, graphic display, so at the moment it's just showing text, and I've only wired it up just using plug-in cables, because the Arduino board came with the headers, and I decided to add the headers to the Breakout board for the OLED system to make it easier to prototype and put together. So that's the first attempt. The software is just using the example software provided within the document for the display, using the SPI display, and just wired up pretty much as they said. Used a couple of different pin numbers on the Arduino because it's a different Arduino, but other than that, pretty good. One of the objectives for the tiny digital voltmeter was to use a printed 3D case to go with it, so obviously because that's going to be small as well. So this is my first attempt. So what I've got there is the hole for the display to go in there, and then this is the size of the Arduino Maker. So didn't quite get that right, because although the Arduino fits inside, you can't actually have the display at the same time. So if you have the display, you can't actually get the Arduino inside because of all the wires, the pins that I've left on these development kits. So if you were just making one as a one-off, permanent, not prototyping, then you could have used the development kit and just wired it up without using the header pins there. And if you get an Arduino without the headers, it would probably have fitted as well. Anyway, not to worry. So while I was thinking about how to cope with that, I thought, well, what I could do is to make a bottom so that it slides into that, so that as with the header pins in, I could have it a long way out, and if I had a system without the header pins, I could slide it in. Had a go at that, thought about it, tried it out. Bit of a problem with the printing. You can see there it's really bowed up at this point here. I think it's a combination of not calibrating the printer when it was hot, and also trying to print before it was fully warmed up the plate. So that was no good anyway. But out of this I think it's 2 centimeters of height I put in there, it's shrunk down to 1.5 centimeters, so half a centimeter of height had disappeared somewhere, so that was no good. So I could have printed it again, but I thought, oh well, that's not going to work, let's try something a bit different. So what I went for instead was to make it longer, so it's not quite as tiny as it was, but still the area here for the display, but this time the Arduino will fit inside, and then the display will fit next to it. And then rather than using a sliding in base, I've decided to use a base that just fits in. So there's a bit of a bodge there, but never mind about that. And then that holds in the Arduino, and that holds in the display. So once they're both inside, that just fits in there, so it just slips in nicely and makes a nice complete case. The hole isn't 3D printed. I drilled that because I forgot to put it in on the print. So another version, I get the heights of these pillars right, and I'd also put in a proper hole here as well, so not to worry, I can do that again another time. So this is the second case that I've printed out. So this has got the display poking through there, not the tidiest solution in the world, we'll come on to that in a minute. And then that's the Arduino and the display just pushed in there, so just enough room for everything to fit in there. And then in this case, this bottom bit, if you put it on carefully enough so you don't catch any of the wires, it just goes in there, oops, pushes in, and then it holds the display down, not quite in place. So that's good. So it plugs in, power supply plugs into there. I was thinking of using a LiPo battery, but I've forgotten that the connector for the LiPo battery is actually on the side of the Arduino, and so I can't plug it in this particular case. So I'd have to make a bigger case, and then it's not really a tiny Arduino. But I thought I'd leave it as it is for the moment. And then in order to make it look a bit better, I decided to print a bezel to go with it, so that fits over the display that side. And what I'm going to do is just put that on there and then glue it on. So that looks quite nice, or it looks better anyway, quite nice. Now I could have printed it with a bezel on, but it would have used a lot of support material here for this side. If I printed it that way down, or if I printed it that way up, it would have needed support material inside to support there. So it seemed a better use of the plastic I've got to just make a separate bezel, which I've printed straight onto the board without using a platform. So that works quite well. I think that's quite nice. It's not showing anything important at the moment, so things to do now, once I've glued that on, is to find a way of making some holes for putting some wires in to connect things. And then I'm thinking that because this is a graphic display rather than a text display, why not make it at a graphical tiny digital voltmeter. So we'll see about doing some graphics on there, perhaps voltage against time or something like that. We'll see how it goes. A bit better program as well.